pediatrician with the University of Florida, and also president of the International Society for Social Pediatrics and Child Health. For those of you who are not familiar with ISSOP, we see ourselves as really the only global organization focused specifically on social pediatrics, addressing not only issues within our own countries, but really taking a more of a global perspective on issues that are profoundly impacting children. Over the last several years, it's not good. Am I still on? Okay. Over the last several years, we focused on armed conflict and the impact of armed conflict on children. This past year, we've refocused our efforts now to focus on climate change, or the climate crisis, and its impact on children. More than a membership organization, we see ourselves as a convening one to convene national and global organizations to
Jeffrey, you've gone completely mute. I'm sorry to trouble you.
Muted and missing.
Okay.
I hope this is nothing personal and he will come soon.
Would it be sensible for Nathan to start your piece?
Yes, I believe that sounds reasonable from my side. If Jeff is able to get audio back, we can give him the speaking rights back again, but I'll go ahead and jump in. My name is Nathan Utman. I'll be the moderator for today's session. And just to tie together the thread that was dangling before we lost Jeff's audio, we have been honored as ISSOP to open up this space to bring together representatives of pediatric organizations and individual child health professionals to focus on the climate crisis over the past 6 or so months. And this is the last of our series of webinars, but we are excited to think about next steps together to co-create and design what we envision to be a lasting space for people from the global level to come together, share ideas and best practices. So we have very impressive, amazing speakers today lined up. I'll go ahead and introduce our 2 speakers, beginning with Fan from the AAP and Camilla from the Royal College. So starting with Fan, Fan Tait is a pediatric neurologist with years of experience in child health and wellness, family-centered care in medical homes, children with special healthcare needs, and healthcare delivery systems. She is currently the Chief Medical Officer of the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, where her oversight includes the Academy Equity Initiative, the development of policy for the AAP, the Pediatric Leadership Initiative, and Physician Wellness and Resilience. In addition, she led the Disaster Preparedness Advisory Council, DPAC, from its inception, as well as AAP climate change initiatives. She earned a BS from the University of Alabama, her MD from the University of Kentucky Medical Center, and completed her pediatric residency and pediatric neurology fellowship at the University of Utah Medical Center. We also have Camilla Kingdom, who is the president of the Royal College for Pediatrics and Child Health, RCPCH. Camilla Kingdom is president of the Royal College, the leading voice for children and young people's health in the UK. Camilla is a consultant neonatologist at the Evelina London Children's Hospital, with subspecialty interest in neonatal nutrition, donor milk banking, and neurodevelopmental follow-up of high-risk neonates. Camilla was Vice President for Education and Professional Development between July 2018 and May 2021. She was elected to the presidential role in December 2020 and took office a few months ago in May of 2021. Camilla grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, and graduated from the University of Cape Town. Camilla came to the UK in 1991 and spent a year doing adult medicine before discovering pediatrics. She never looked back. She trained in London, achieving her CCT in 2000, and has been a consultant neonatologist at the Evelina London Children's Hospital since then. Camilla has a long-standing involvement in medical education at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. She was head of the London School of Pediatrics and Child Health for 5 years, and this gave her unique opportunities to see firsthand the highs and lows of working in pediatrics and all its subspecialties in a wide range of different clinical settings. Camilla has always been involved in postgraduate medical education, taking on roles as college tutor, then regional advisor, training program director, and finally head of School of London for 5 years. She completed an MA in medical careers and particularly enjoys supporting doctors with challenging career dilemmas. Camilla's priorities are to tackle retention issues to sustain a first-class workforce, including addressing equality, diversity, and inclusion, and to advocate for child health in the context of climate change and wider health inequalities. We're honored to welcome both of our prestigious speakers and looking forward to learning together with all of you as we envision next steps, looking ahead a little over a month from now to the COP26 and far into the future with how we can work together to ensure that climate change doesn't rob our children of their opportunity to have a beautiful and thriving future. So with that, I'll welcome the next speaker and look forward to what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to talk at this great program this evening. My name is Camilla Kingdom, and I'm President of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. And what I'd like to talk about to all of you is what we've been doing at the Royal College around this really important issue of climate change and sustainability in healthcare. So I thought I'd begin by just giving you a bit of context so that you could understand a little bit about our Royal College, because I'm conscious that there's an international audience with us at this event. So the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health became a Royal College 25 years ago, and so we in fact just had our 25th birthday. And we have a dual mission. Firstly, we have a remit to support and develop our workforce. So we're involved in developing curricula, setting exams and assessments, offering career support, professional development, and so on. And then the second part of our mission is our advocacy role, which is around advocating for child health and seeking to improve the quality of care for children. So we're a very busy charity with lots of areas of responsibility and activity. And I think it's fair to say that climate change and sustainability has always been important to us. And I think particularly of our work that we've been doing for some years now around air pollution, particularly thinking about the quality of both indoor and outdoor air and the impact on children. But I think it's fair to say that it was not a clear and spoken priority until some members came forward in 2020 and put forward a motion at our annual general meeting asking the college to declare a climate emergency. And so obviously a vote was taken at the AGM, and of course it was passed by a huge majority. And the importance of that is that it then meant that it gave us a springboard to really ratchet up our work and make climate change a far more overt college priority. So we thought very carefully about how we were going to go about doing this work. We were conscious that we wanted to do this in a genuinely meaningful way. We were clear that we needed to find a model that was going to be possible to sustain over many years, because sadly the climate crisis isn't going to go away. And so we needed to find a way of working that meant we could invest and develop it for the long term. And as a college, it so happened that last autumn, we were also beginning a really important piece of work around equality, diversity and inclusion. And we'd found a really successful framework for doing that work. And so what we decided to do was essentially apply the same framework to the climate change and sustainability agenda. And we put out a call to our members and asked people to volunteer to get involved. And we were anxious because it was the autumn of 2020. The UK was going into the second wave of the COVID pandemic. We were very conscious that paediatricians might not have the time to devote to this work. But incredibly, 80 of our members came forward and volunteered, which was a brilliant result. And they have then formed our working group, which we've divided into 5 work streams, which I'll tell you a bit more about in a minute. And then in addition, we have dedicated college staff led by Alison Firth, who has a fabulous track record of working on projects that deliver in a really meaningful way. So we have a really good infrastructure now at the college devoted to this work. So as our 80 members came together, we sat down to work out what our overall climate change ambitions are. And I've listed them here on this slide. The first ambition is that around advocacy. So how do we use our collective voice to, as well as the expertise and influence of paediatricians, to really give some energy and voice to the climate change agenda, speaking about both the physical and the mental health impacts of the climate crisis on children. Our second ambition is around research. So the importance of trying to understand where we've got good research and where the gaps are, about how we can influence the research needed to focus on the impact on children, and particularly around child health inequalities. Our third ambition was very specifically focused on the college, so the college building and the college infrastructure, and I'll tell you a bit more about that shortly. Then we thought it was really important that we should support our members, give them the tools and the resources so that they could be advocating in their workplaces. Education, of course, is key, and as a college we see that as something that's very important to us. And then finally, and probably most importantly of all, is how could we support children and young people and support the narrative that the climate crisis is essentially a child's rights crisis. So those are our 6 ambitions. And we then set up the infrastructure by which we work. So this is an organogram that shows essentially how we're doing our work. You'll see the 5 work streams in the 5 green bubbles, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. And then crucially, you'll see that in leadership roles are some of the most senior members of the college team. We have Jo Revel, our chief executive, leading the staff reference group with Alison Firth. Liz Marder, our treasurer, is the overall chair of the whole group. And then I'm going to be chairing the expert reference group. And we felt we wanted that level of seniority leading this because this is such a priority for the college. So as I mentioned, we've got 5 work streams, and I just want to give you some highlights from the early work coming out of these 5 groups. So the work stream number 1 is the Advocating for Change work stream. And this group have been thinking about what their guiding principles are. So thinking big is all about saying the Royal College needs to be ambitious in advocating for change. We are a trusted national body, so let's use that position to amplify the message. We need to be bold. In other words, we need to be out there challenging institutions that we believe aren't acting fast enough. We need to think about the evidence that we've got and how we can use it to make the case. And if we haven't got the evidence, that we should lobby for research to be undertaken. Clearly, we need to think creatively. We need to think about new ways of working. We need to be innovative in how we carry out this work. We believe that collaboration is key. We haven't got time to duplicate effort. And we certainly can't be wasting time reinventing the wheel. So let's collaborate and work together with other organizations that are working in this space. And then finally, and I think probably most importantly, we need to step up in our responsibilities as adults. We need to listen to our young people. We need to amplify their voices. The second work stream is the research work stream that's looking at impact. Now, this group is currently gathering the evidence base and understanding where there is evidence, understanding where there are gaps, particularly thinking about the physical and mental health consequences of climate change on children. And the group is using a quality improvement approach. So this is all about using research in order to inform change and improve care. Then the third work stream is really about the college itself. So our college building, which is in central London, is currently being refurbished. We're going to undertake a carbon audit when we get back in October. We need to think about how we undertake work. So how much work needs to be undertaken face-to-face versus virtually. So thinking about staff travel, thinking about printing, paper, other consumables. We have a huge range of activities, courses, our conference. So, thinking particularly about the conference where we may draw both speakers and attendees from a wide number of countries. Can we deliver some of our conference virtually in order to cut down on travel? Thinking about the food we offer, thinking about the other consumables. So really thinking hard about the college activities and where we can improve and make it more sustainable. The fourth work stream gets to the heart of our membership. So, we have members all over the world. How can we help them to really deliver on the sustainability and healthcare agenda? What are the resources we can develop for our members? What are the training needs that our membership need? So lots of thinking about how we can support members. And then finally, we have an international work stream. So 20% of our members live outside of the UK, and that's really important. And the other really key thing for us as a college is that we have a really core bit of our work, which is around global child health. And we're really proud of our work we do in that arena. So the international work stream is a really important one for us, and they've really got off the ground and are really getting stuck in and doing a lot of work. So this slide tells you about some of their work at the moment, looking at the international research. What are the kind of key messages coming out of global child health, the impact both directly and indirectly on illness. And then also in the international work group, we're trying to think about, what are the key recommendations, what are the key messages? How can we understand our target audience internationally? And then crucially, and this is where this webinar this evening is a really brilliant example, where can we collaborate with other international groups that are passionate about this topic and working in this field? So our international group is a really key work stream for us. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention children and young people. At the college, we have a really proud area of activity, which we call RCPCH and Us. Essentially, it's a group of close to 1,000 young people and parents who work with us to support our work across all of our activities. And it won't surprise you to know that climate change is a priority for them. So we're working with them to understand what they see as the priorities, using their ideas, and helping to amplify their voice. So you'll be hearing a lot about the children and young people as the college work develops, because this is a really important part of our activity. So here are our 2021 plans, and you'll see that we have plans that are going to stretch out over the following years. We're just about, in fact, in the next week, to launch our 2021 to 2024 college strategy. And I'm really proud to say that within that strategy, climate change and sustainability in healthcare is front and central. And so that will give us the impetus to really get stuck into this work with a great deal of energy and commitment. Alison and her team are working really hard on our college website, where we have a dedicated area on this topic, with an increasing number of resources, topic areas, blogs from members, opportunities to get involved. So for those of you that are interested, please take a look at the RCPCH website. There's lots there, resources that you can use in your workplace, or to provoke ideas for work, to really focus on this area. So this is my final slide. I'm delighted to take part in this webinar this evening. I think this is a hugely exciting and really important area of work. I have been so gratified by the size and then the enthusiasm that our members have given us, and the level of support that we've had from members. I think it speaks to me of how important pediatricians believe this topic to be. And actually not just pediatricians from the younger generation. We've got some really senior consultants and staff grade doctors who've thrown their weight into this work. So I think everyone from our children and young people all the way to our most senior colleagues, everybody is enthusiastic about this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this work evolves, and playing my part in leading it while I'm president. But we are committed to playing our role, and committed to amplifying the voice of children and young people on this really important matter. So thank you.
So I'm happy to jump in. I think that we're not taking questions yet, but I'm hesitating to see if there are. No, we'll take them later. I'm looking at. So hello, everyone. I'm Fan Tait, as you heard, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer at the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I'm happy to be here with you today. Let me just share my screen. Hold, please. Okay. I'm just checking to make sure you can see that okay. Full screen. Okay, let me get going. What a remarkable opportunity. I'm truly humbled to be with you today. I'm here to say a few words for a few minutes about what we're doing at the AAP. I want to say first, though, I'm just the mouthpiece of wonderful pediatricians that are doing so much, not only here in the United States, but obviously across the world. But I'm the mouthpiece today for AAP, for the incredible work done by our passionate and dedicated and knowledgeable members. It's great to hear all the good work from Dr. Kingdom. And I think you'll see some of the same things that we're doing as what you've just heard, but in a little bit different way. So let's get started. When I'm thinking in terms of children, and when you're thinking in terms of children and their needs, you know this, they are uniquely vulnerable. That's why you're on this call. That's why you're doing what you're doing. That's what you're looking at with the last 7 meetings. So congratulations on the wonderful work that you're doing. As we think about this, I'll do exactly what Dr. Kingdom did. But let me tell you a little bit about the American Academy of Pediatrics. So we are approximately 68,000 members, and we have primary care pediatricians, we have medical subspecialists, we have pediatric, surgical specialists, and here's the mission, right? Obtaining the optimal physical, mental, and social health and well-being for all infants, children, adolescents, and young adults. So here's what you'll hear about what we're looking at with the AAP. Within our 68,000 members, we actually have committees and councils and sections and departments and divisions. So these are the leadership entities that develop our policy, that look at our educational program and resources, and that advocate for health initiatives. So just like you just heard, we look particularly at education, advocacy, and policy. And we've been looking at that and working on that in the context of what we're talking about today for a while. Today, we'll just talk a little bit about examples of what we've been doing. I put this one on first to let you know that just like we just heard, climate change, clean air, and environmental justice is one of the AAP priorities. This was part of the transition plan when we had President Biden come back in. So we presented him with a pediatric transition plan, and climate change and clean air and environmental justice was a significant part of that transition plan. In the context of what we're looking at, we also have policy. So as I said, policy, advocacy, education. So from a policy perspective, this was as far back as 2015 when we developed and the board approved our first policy on global climate change and children's health. So it's been 6 years, and this is currently in revision, and you'll hear about other policies that we're developing and moving forward on. So I don't need to tell you all this, you know it. But when I'm thinking in terms of climate change, I always think about the key points and what we say to families, what we say to parents about their children, what we say to our partners, what we say to our legislators. You know this, and you can read the bottom line, right? Is children are not just little adults. And this is a crisis, what we're dealing with. So these are some of the points that we talked to them about. A few more of the points, we want them to think in terms of what's happening with disasters writ large, including injury and death, and what climate change has caused and is causing. And then the other thing that you heard from the Royal College too is we're particularly looking at the equity issues. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we move forward. So within the Academy, we have all these councils and bodies that are doing the work. The major one is our Council on Environmental Health. And just recently, it used to be Council on Environmental Health, and recently it was renamed to include climate change. So this is where our home for members interested in and concerned about children's environmental health and toxic exposures and climate change and environmental justice, that's where it lives in the Academy. It's led by a volunteer 11-member executive committee of experts. I was just checking, there are over 200 pediatricians that are part of this council scattered throughout the states. In addition to this 11-member executive committee, we have federal liaisons from the Centers for Disease Control, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the National Cancer Institute, and the National Institute of, and the National Institute of Environmental Health Services. So that's kind of the hub of where we are and what we're doing. A few things that they're working on right now, leading the development of the AAP policy statements on, you heard the update of the climate change, one on environmental justice, one on designing communities to promote children's health, and one that they just finished on ambient air pollution. Just like the Royal College, we're looking at how we interact with families. There's in development right now a climate change on fact sheets for families. And just a part of what they're doing is, what we're looking at is how do we get our members involved from medical school through residency, through fellowship. So the trainees, so we have a big number, as I'm sure you all do, or the Royal College does, on pediatric trainees, and there's a whole subcommittee now, just getting them involved early on and getting them interested in what we're doing. So we have our big national meeting coming up in October, virtual, still this year, but of our 8 or so plenary presentations, one is on climate change and what that means. And we'll have over, right now we have 7,000 attendees. We hope to have even more before we start this. We just have finished, and thanks to Dr. Ruth Edsel, who's been the editor of this, the Pediatric Environmental Health 4th edition. We call it the Green Book as opposed to the Red Book and infectious disease. This is our Green Book. There's a big chapter in there on climate change. We have podcasts. We're looking at maintenance of certification and impacts of climate change. But I do want to say just a little bit about our healthychildren.org. So we have an outward-facing family web presence that's called healthychildren.org. We also have it Healthy Children in Espanol. And we are up to now over 1 million hits a month, actually. And part of what we put up on this website, it's a big website, as you can imagine, but it's talking with children about climate change and how climate change affects children. And we have blogs that people can access to. There's some links if you got a chance and want to take a look, please do. So as you're thinking about your countries and what you're doing, when we're thinking about the United States, so we have all of this with our committees, councils, and sections, but what we're looking at is how do we roll this all out to all our states across the United States. So we now have AAP chapter climate advocates. So within each state, thanks to Dr. Lori Byron and others, within each state, we have a chapter climate advocate that works in our, within our chapters there. And then we have work across all of those states. So that's the network to promote state level action. So you've heard some of the things that we're looking at the AAP national level, and then we're rolling it out to our committees, councils, and sections, and then we're rolling it out and receiving feedback from our different chapters. So it's a partnership between the chapters from the council and other grant activities that we look at. So all of the states, the chapters are now represented in this network group. There are monthly virtual meetings. What we're looking at is how to support the creation of local climate committees within the chapters, and involving even more pediatricians at the local and state level in what we're doing, and looking at those local opportunities, but also at the local challenges. Newsletters, listservs, websites, blogs, letters to the editor, advocacy at the state level. That's what we're looking at with the climate advocates. So now for just a minute, I'll talk about some of our partnerships of the Academy, not yet as much globally as we'll be talking about today, but from a national level. So you'll hear about pediatric environmental health specialty units, Eco-America, Social Climate, a Medical Society Consortium. And then something new that we're really pleased and can't wait to be more involved in is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and what they're doing with the new Biden administration. So just let me tell you just a few things here about some of these. I won't spend a long time on this. So we call these PACEs, so Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Units. It's actually a grant that we have, a national grant, and you can read here: to improve the reproductive and children's health by leading the integration of environmental health into clinical care and public health. So in addressing the threat of climate change. We're the national office on that, but we're working with healthcare professionals, with parents, schools, community groups, and all focus on education. Consultation too, you can call these PACEs and receive individual consultation and outreach for different groups. I'm sure you know about Eco-America. We partner with them on, or hopefully you may know, you may not know about Eco-America, but a great partner on climate and health since 2015. And we're looking at increasing the capacity of organizations. We hosted with them a national leadership forum on climate and children's health in October of 2020. And I'll tell you a little bit more. We've actually hosted just recently, just this summer, a health ambassadors training in July for pediatric health professionals. So this is that education piece and getting more members involved. If you, excuse me for going back and forth, if you think about the ambassadors, there were webinars weekly for a month with actual training of people, anyone who wanted to sign up. And we've used those ambassadors to get more involvement at every level of not just the AAP, but with our partnership with others. So we're involved in the Social Climate Leadership Group. Dr. Gary Belkin is leading that group, who's and this is the one that we're really looking at with mental health and children's health organizations. So stay tuned as we're looking at a lot of what we're talking about here. Is we're working with our partners in the Social Climate Leadership Group to work with youth advocates. I loved what Dr. Kingdom said and wrote that, be the adults our young people need. I love that. And what we know is we can learn so much from our youth advocates. And we're looking at, there are several different organizations, youth advocate organizations on climate change in the United States. So we're actually pulling that information together and seeing how we can support them if they need us. I can tell you what we can do is learn from them, and we are. There's a Medical Society Consortium on climate and health. We were a founding member of that. There are over 33 member organizations here in the United States, focus on policy and advocacy. And then this was launched, like we said, to start the conversation with the public and policymakers on this. Well, this we're looking forward to, you all. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is establishing the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, first office of its kind at the national level. And here's what was said by the first White House National Climate Advisor, Ms. McCarthy. Here's what we want to do to bring America's world-class medical community into the fight against climate change. So if pediatricians ask us, and we hope they do, how can they engage with the AAP on this? We have a lot of information from an advocacy perspective with resources and links. We talk there about legislation and key issues and initiatives. We talk about how to engage policymakers and the media. We ask them to join the council, and we ask them to be involved locally. And I will just end with this quote, and this was from the AAP statement on global climate change. It's one of my favorite statements. Although uncertainties remain regarding risk and appropriate policy response, failure to take prompt, substantive action, given our current knowledge, would be an act of injustice to all children. So thank you for letting me tell you a little bit about what the AAP is doing. I'm looking forward to more collaboration with all of you and from an international perspective, and really looking forward to the discussions of not just collaboration, but the significant potential next steps. So I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fan and Camilla. And on behalf of all your colleagues within the AAP and Royal College, we are collectively impressed, I'm sure, by the amazing work that's happening. And I believe that it's a firm foundation on which we can build and really think about how this paradigm planetary issue, we can come together as a planetary community, because as much as we do at the local, the state, the regional, the national levels, unless we are able to come together as one human family, I think there's a very strong case that we're actually not going to get very far. So before we open it up to the full body, I want to appreciate the questions that have been posed in the chat already. We'll get to those in due course, but want to give the specific opportunity to respond to the different presentations. Fan, you were able to follow Camilla, but I see we have several representatives from the Royal College who can potentially speak to this question that is central to our gathering today about specific next steps and international global planetary collaborations, what ideas you might have about how we can avoid reinventing the wheel and build on the foundation that's already there, but really wanting to be sure that we don't leave today without being clear on that question about how we can try and ensure that we are building our relationships and trusts and see how we can work together at the global level. So I'll just open it up to anyone from the Royal College, and then Fan, if you have any more to say about that specific question.
Sorry, hi, I'm Liz. I'm the treasurer of the college. I did just actually lose what the specific question was. I lost you just at the crucial moment.
Sorry. So basically on the question of interest in willingness to engage at the global level, today's meeting, we're trying as ISSOP and our partner organizations to bring a coalition together, to bring a network, really have it grounded in community principles of equity, inclusion, diversity, centering children and their voices. But it seems that there are early stage interest in having this type of sustained dialogue, but from your perspective as an organization, how we could ensure that this is an ongoing discussion that, again, doesn't reinvent the wheel and is as natural as and as impactful as possible.
I mean, you know, it is one of our ambitions to join together and definitely not invent the wheel. And through all our work streams, one of the themes is about sharing resources with organisations locally and internationally. And one of our work streams specifically has an international focus. So I don't know if Bernie wants to answer that, because they've already thought about how we might partner with other organisations as part of that work stream. So Bernie is on this call, so I don't know if she wants to speak to that, but absolutely we're very keen to collaborate. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to amplify our voices.
Thanks, Liz, very much. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the critical thing about partner and collaboration will be, what do we get behind? What message do we get behind? And I have a feeling that that's what we're all kind of grasping and struggling with at the moment. I think there'd be no disagreement that we're all behind the key message of child rights. And that's easy, but what exactly do we mean? What exactly are we asking our international, what are we calling for policymakers to do? And I think one of the things we've thought quite a bit about in our international work stream was the fact that so many millions and billions of children are currently exposed to environmental hazards. And for example, when we begin to think, and I mean, you know, things that we know they're going to be exposed to more environmental hazards, but they're already exposed to hazards that, you know, is currently an emergency. They don't all drink clean water and enjoy safe sanitation, etc., etc. So I suppose that what we've been given a bit of thought to was, can we really call on policymakers to invest in, of course, as well as mitigating climate change, but getting ready for what we know is going to happen by ensuring all children today and now in all parts of the world have their fundamental rights, to leave them in a stronger position to meet the upcoming challenges that we know they are going to face. So, I mean, that was some of our thoughts, that of something that we could stand behind and get behind. Thank you.
So Nathan, should I comment now? Okay. I agree with what's been said. I would like to key off the messaging part, because I think that is so important. When we're all behind it, just like was just said, Bernadette. We all agree on what's happening and the needs, right? But the messaging at different levels. So I think messaging to families, how we do that, and messaging to different governments, it's different in different countries, obviously. But if you look at the people who are on this call, as I was just meeting some of you earlier, it is absolutely remarkable what we, as you know, can learn, and you've been learning from ISSOP and otherwise, but what we can learn from each other about what works with messaging. And if it can be as consistent as we can make it, then that does indeed amplify the message everywhere. I think in terms of the messaging to families, particularly when we've looked at messaging, at least here in the United States, they may or may not say that climate change is one of their major priorities. If you ask them to pick their top 10 priorities, it would probably be now with COVID and otherwise, the economy, you know, equity, all of those things. But when you say to them, what is it that you wish for your children, right? What is it that you want? And they will always say, I want them to have more than I had. I want them to be healthier than I am. I want them to thrive. And so how I know I'm preaching to the choir when I'm talking with you all, but how we actually message so that, at least in the United States, so that people, not just pediatricians, but families are talking about this even more. Now, unfortunately, they're facing it even more, whether it's wildfires or hurricanes or fill in the blank, just like you all are. But I think the messaging may be very helpful on what's learned and not reinventing the wheel, with intentional next steps of how we can work together. Thank you.
Nathaniel, could I say a word or two, please? I'm from the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health Climate Change Committee, and I see Lucy and various other people are from there as well. One of my points is, and we've discussed this before, is you were talking about messaging, Fem. I think the biggest message that I have perhaps imparted over the last few months has been to teach medical students when they come for their placement with us. And one of the sessions I actually give is on planetary health. And I think it's something that we should strongly work hard and fast and sort of do it yesterday rather than tomorrow. So if we can get the younger doctors, you see, I think a lot of people who are here today are the converted. And I think what we need to do is convert the future generation of doctors, because I think there's an ethical issue here. We have got an ethical duty to tell everybody about it. And also people trust us. And we are probably, next to the nurses, the most trusted profession there is.
Totally agree.
Well, thank you very much for those responses. I'm highly encouraged. And again, on behalf of ISSOP, we're committed to an ongoing discussion. So look forward for specific next steps. And anyone on the call, if you want to put in the chat or reach out to me directly or Jeff on behalf of ISSOP, we are committed to ensuring that this is just a seed that is going to be the first step of something that is in line with the scale of the crisis, that we ensure that it's actually a hopeful opportunity to heal the deeply broken relationship and the division, so that, as we said, the human family at the global level, that's really what we need to do to honor and actualize child rights. So I'll go ahead and jump into the questions that have been posed in the chat and try my best to go in order of the questions that were posed. Kathy Kemper had the first question that I see that brought in the question of fossil fuel divestment with the Royal College, and then also, again, on the theme of partnerships, had mentioned groups like My Green Doctor that has information available in offices. So maybe just to start with that question, more for the Royal College, but feel free to jump in on that topic as well, Fan.
Okay, so I mean, we're a young college and we're in the fortunate position of not having to divest because we hadn't invested. So we've only really started investing very, very recently. And the first thing we did is we set up an ethical investment policy, which included a lot of parameters, including not taking funding from, not taking investments associated with baby milk companies, gambling, repressive regimes, and of course fossil fuels. So we've been as careful as we can be to do that. As we've gone through our journey, we've been further challenged about that because of pooled investment policies and being careful that we're not inadvertently investing in fossil fuel companies. But you know, that was the first thing that we looked at. So we do feel we're on that journey and trying very hard not to do that. I don't know whether were we just taking the investment part of the question first, or were we going on to talk about?
Yeah, maybe Fan, if you have any words to say about that. Or, yeah.
Kathy, thank you. Kathy, thank you for asking that question. I was just talking with our CEO last night because I was telling him we're going to be on this call, and I think that we've tried to look at that too, but it's a lot like Liz said. Sorry, Dr. Martyr said.
Liz,
it's a lot like she says sometimes, and I'm not. This is no excuse. It's no excuse, but sometimes it's hard when you're looking at where you're investing to know how far exactly how to get to all the inadvertent pieces of that. And we do the same thing that you do with respect to whatever it is, guns, alcohol. Now, we need to be looking even more with this. So Kathy, great question. And we're trying to do more. So.
And again, I think this is something where we could collaborate on, how do you deal with things. We were very pleased that the company we chose to manage our investments policies have gone on to develop some ethical pool funds, which we like to think they based their model on the work they've done with us. So hopefully we're leading them to develop the sort of pooled funds that they know that people like us would like to invest in. But we can certainly share how we approach that.
Right.
So I appreciate that allusion to a specific task that's this global coalition could work on, is basically the best practices for how we can ensure that we're walking the walk when it comes to the reality of how a lot of power is allocated and funding streams. This is not a unique issue at the country level. So I think sharing best practices for the ways that we can ensure that we're principled and have integrity, along with as sustainable as possible the working relationships and who pediatric and child health organizations partner with. This is actually a very important issue. So I appreciate that recommendation for what we can do together. Next question I see was from Una McFadden. When we talk about air pollution, could pediatricians consider the impact of aerosol and other fragrance emitters that can cause airway irritation, especially in indoor insulated environments, including schools?
I think the answer to that is yes, we can. I'm not quite sure how to answer it. We've certainly worked on air pollution indoor and out, and been collaborating on the statements from the Royal College of Physicians regarding that. I'm not sure I have much more to say specifically about that, other than we should be supporting it, yes.
I would agree. I'm just thinking in terms of the policy statement on ambient air and what we need to look at and how we're rolling that out. But the answer is yes, absolutely, particularly maybe even more important as we move forward with getting back everyone into schools with COVID and with, all of those things with the mask and how that works, everything.
So thank you for that feedback.
Can I just, sorry, it's just to add a little bit. When I read about air pollution, I never see any mention of these fragrant aerosols that are so popular, and yet they are all chemicals and they're all aerosols. And I think that the public don't think of them as pollutants or potential toxins for children's airway.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I echo that point. It's not something that we're well aware of. And I think it touches on kind of the fundamental infrastructure architecture of modern societies, that we have a lot of exposures which violate the precautionary principle, endocrine disruptors, and so much of the artificial ingredients that go into what we consume and inhale our exposures on a daily basis. So I appreciate trying to cast a wide and appropriate net in looking at the ways that both for children and ourselves, we can ensure that we're not inadvertently exposing ourselves to unnecessary and actually severe harm and risk. So thank you for that question. Abdul Gatrad, I heard come in earlier from the Royal College, but just want to also give attention to the comments and the question, what is the view of the two experts on including this subject in the medical curriculum? Secondly, do they think we are ready to call this issue a planetary emergency, implying that there is serious interdependence of humans with animals and the environment? And so I hear a strong resonance with the philosophical questions of what it actually means to be a human, what it means to be alive, which I think are profound and deeply important as we talk about shifting the values and understanding how we got into this predicament. So I think planetary health is a place where there's a lot of emerging dialogue, trying to seriously consider these questions about anthropocentrism, the idea that people are separate from and superior to the other life forms in the community of life. And so maybe touching on that, any thoughts to share from either of the bodies? And maybe just to add a layer of specificity that climate change is certainly a paramount foundational issue, but it's not the only one. There are lots of other global challenges that fall under the rubric of environmental, which arguably has been very problematically separated from human health, that we see ourselves as separate from the natural world. So as we learn from how we got into the fix of climate change, how we can pay attention to other issues, ecological degradation, biodiversity loss, pollution, etc. Any thoughts on what we can do as human health professionals, but really needing to work together with and learn from a lot of other professionals who have expertise in this realm?
So Nathan, I think I'll just say yes to what you just said. So I don't need to repeat that because you said it beautifully. Whether we call this, what we're dealing with from climate change is certainly a crisis, right? And however it's labeled and whatever we're doing, yes, we need to be doing that. And you summarized it beautifully in the sense that we're all in this together. And the thing that I like most, everything you said, but the last thing, which is we're not going to fix this as physicians on our own. So the collaboration, it's great that we are collaborating from a physician perspective, but unless we have the right partners around the table, we'll be more like a voice in the wilderness, right? So I think that from our perspective, particularly even with our council, we looked pretty closely at some of the, or they looked pretty closely at some of the right groups to have as liaisons, but there are many other groups that we should be looking at, whether that's at the community level, this in our sense at the state level or at the national level. So, and they're not all medical, right? But unless we're working with them, we won't be able to make the change. So thank you for saying that and summarizing it.
Thank you, Fan. Anything from Royal College perspective, or
anything specific to say on that?
Okay.
I mean, no, we haven't answered the question specifically about the medical school curriculum. I mean, I think Professor Grachad probably knows better than I about how we influence the medical school curriculum, and that is absolutely on our agenda. I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting bits, because I think the pressure to include this on the medical school curriculum is also coming from the medical students. So, you know, it's coming from both ends, about those who organise, but about those who receive. We have a health policy nationally about every contact counts, and that's about bringing health education messages into every consultation. And I think what Professor Grachad was just saying about, you know, his contacts with medical students, we must not only formally get it into the curriculum, but we also need to get it into every contact we have them. We spend time with them, and we need to bring it into every contact we have with them. And that's where a lot of our stuff about having educational resources available, you know, I'm humbled that people would put the word expert anywhere near me. I'm not an expert on climate change by any means, and what this work has meant to me is I've managed to get a lot of experts around me who do know a lot about it. So one of the main aims is that we want to have resources, and that some are on our website already, to give budding paediatricians, training paediatricians, senior paediatricians the tools to use this work, to bring this work into every contact with parents, every contact with children, every contact with their trainees, every contact with their students. And that's a really important part of our work, is to give everyone, including myself, the tools to be able to talk about this with confidence. So yes, we are trying to talk about getting it on the medical school curriculums. We're already including it in our postgraduate training curriculum for paediatricians. So our new curriculum is going to be including elements of this.
Yeah, thank you both for those excellent responses. The next question I see from Tony, and it's, I think, highlights some of the complexity that we are talking some serious and challenging changes that need to take place. And one is that the United States is very much a car culture, if we call it that. And so the question touches on the role that AAP may play in trying to advocate for a shift from carbon intensive transports to alternatives, bicycles, public transport, electric vehicles, etc. So any thoughts on that question, Fan?
It's a great comment and a great question. I think that as we move forward with our with the leadership, that our board, but also particularly coming up from our members, and particularly looking at the council, what we do is develop policy. You saw the 5 policy statements that they're working on, and so I think what we will do with that and is go right back to them as they're thinking about, from a council perspective, what happens with us is it comes up. We not only do we want, but we want the policy so that we can actually use that when we advocate in DC with it. And so obviously they're in the midst of about 5 other policies, but I would bet they'll be looking at that too. And then what happens with that is it goes across the whole academy. So when a policy is developed, then the whole academy takes a look at it, and then the board approves it. And then we particularly use that with advocacy at not only in DC, but at the state level. So absolutely, we should be looking at those kind of things as we move forward. We're not quite there yet on where we are with it, but.
Yeah, but I appreciate that there is infrastructure and a pathway, an existing mechanism to address those questions. So I think we'll do our best to continue raising them in collaboration with our global network and global partners. So it looks like, doing a quick time check, that we are moving towards closing the Q&A. I'm sorry for those who had posed questions that we may not have time to address all of them. But we're about to go into regional breakout rooms where we can have a more interactive and participatory community building session where we get to know each other better. But I'll just quickly pay attention to Allison Leaf's question. Is the AAP making specific demands or requests to the US delegation at COP26? So this is time sensitive within the next little over a month, and very much in line with what our ISSOP team was aiming for, this timely conversation about that there are global agreements and meetings that take place. And our position is that even if children and youth have some representation there, we feel like there's a lot of potential and a need for stronger representation and stronger collaboration, both amongst children and with child rights, child health, child advocacy organizations like we represent today. So just to hear if there's any response to that, any thoughts on that question, and then to invite any last words from Fan, Liz, or any Royal College representatives before we jump to the breakout rooms.
So, wow, thank you for that question, and it's time sensitive, I know, and I don't have an answer for you right now. However, I'm happy to take this offline and have a discussion about it quickly so we can see. But I don't know specifically that we have done that, but I'd be happy to pull our advocacy people together quickly to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
I would say for us that you know, we're part of the UK Health Alliance on Climate Change and various other organisations who are collectively trying to make sure this happens. We were quite disappointed because we put in a number of presentations to actually have a presence at COP, including our sort of main point was going to be having our RCPCH and us presenting about what it meant for children and young people, and none of these got into the agenda. So we're still a little bit unclear about how we may personally have representation at COP, but in order to get to the elected representatives, I think we will be doing that collaboratively with the other organisations.
Yeah, Tony, can you mention what's going to be happening and the webinar?
It's like the bike ride, Jeff, I assume.
Well, the bike ride, and then there will be a webinar, a global webinar that will be. So Lucy, if you and or Tony can mention that.
Yeah, but before we all break out, we've heard at previous of these ISSOP webinars how there is this Ride for Their Lives cycle ride. There's now 70 child health professionals who will be riding all or part of the route from Great Ormond Street Hospital in London to the Children's Hospital in Glasgow for COP26. And we feel very strongly the responsibility that we're not just, you know, we're apart from Christine, who's also on this call, who is coming from France via Eurostar, so not burning a fossil fuel in order to be part of that cycle ride. We're UK based health professionals, but we very strongly feel the responsibility to be representing our colleagues internationally. COP26 obviously is an international meeting, and action has to be taken internationally, and so to try and actively involve people from child health professionals in other nations, we have already started our kind of onslaught of contacting children's hospitals all over the world, and trying to have them engender some actions around cycling locally, and talking about climate change around the cycling, and logging their miles on Strava to, we want 1 million kilometers, sorry, I used the word miles, sorry, I should be international, kilometers, 1 million kilometers ridden through the month of October and logged onto that site. And there's going to be a load of media attention around this, and we want to make as much of that as possible, and for that to be international. And because the organization, they think, oh, we'll contact other children's hospitals. They keep thinking children's hospitals. I don't work in a hospital. We don't have primary care pediatricians in the UK, but the UK and so a lot of people involved aren't thinking of paediatric primary care. But anyway, I don't work in a hospital, but they're linking with other children's hospitals. But I've said, as we do that, we should also be thinking, well, in that country, if we've made a relationship with a children's hospital, we should also think, well, what ISSOP members do we have in that country to also be involved? I found the whole process of being involved in the lead up to this cycle ride means that I'm talking so much more with other paediatricians about particularly air pollution as an element of climate change and child health. And I hope I'm getting better at it by doing that. I'm only doing one leg of the cycle, but during that time, you know, I'll be meeting other paediatricians and child health professionals who are very committed. So there's a lot that's happening. And I know the RCPCH is very interested in that. I'm in the advocacy work stream of the RCPCH Climate Change Working Group. But there are things, it's not all up to the college, it's not all up to the academy. academy. There are things that pediatricians can then, once they've got the ball rolling or the cycle wheels rolling, they can actually influence beyond just the college or the academy. But yeah, sorry, Tony, the webinar. I always talk too much.
Yes, just briefly, this is, I mean, I'm going to be on the ride from Newcastle to Glasgow, and I think it's going to be a great event. I think the RCPCH is supporting it, and I think that Camilla is going to be on part of it as well. But at the end of it, we're hoping with the college and other collaborators to hold another ISSOP webinar with members of the cycle ride taking part, and also the members of the virtual cycle ride who are taking part in other parts of the world. And this would be on the first day of COP, because basically the cycle ride is arriving in Glasgow on the 31st of October, and the COP starts, that's the Sunday, the COP starts on the Monday. So it's most likely to be on the Monday, and will involve members around the world, but particularly focusing on the people who've been on the ride, what they want to ask those in the COP should come out of it for child health. Because I think our task is to try and really magnify the child health component. We've already heard that health is not a very big part of the COP discussions. But I gather there will be a meeting on the 6th of November, organized by the UK and Global Health Alliance on health aspects. So we want to push the child health, particularly to the leaders of the world.
All right, so we will be we'll be working with Tony, Lucy, and others to actually convene that global workshop or that global symposium. What's really interesting, not only have these seminars been tremendously successful, but we have over 800 unique individuals that have registered for these for the symposium, and so we'll be reaching out to them for engagement and involvement as well. So we need to thank Mark. Is Mark on the call, Tony?
I think not, because I think he wasn't able to, but
okay,
we'll have to represent him.
So Tony, we're going to take bets to see how long it's going to take for that pile of books behind you to fall off the edge of the table. So we should pay attention to that. All right. So Nathan, do you want to, or actually, why don't we move to Miguel? Do you want to explain how we need to move to the regional breakout sessions?
Sure, let me just go ahead and throw up this instructional slide real quick.
It's from the intimate time you had in your breakout room, clarity about really how we can carry forward the momentum so that when we say bye in a few minutes, it's just till next time.
Raul, do you want to get started? Why don't we just go region by region? Nathan, did you remember to press record?
No.
All right, so North America. And
I took notes though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raul?
Actually, there is a person from Mexico that has participated in our session that he is going to transmit our views.
Great.
Are you there?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, go ahead, please. Introduce yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Jorge Martinez. I'm an engineer from Mexico. I studied in the US, and I'm a climate activist. So I work quite a bit with Fridays for Future and the likes. And even though we had a very brief discussion in the Latin American group, there were only 3 of us. I think there were 2 or 3 very important takeaways. One of them is that realization that the burden is being passed to the next generations, and the importance of having strong institutions and organizations raising the voice, doing advocacy. And personally, I believe that COP26 might be a very good time, or the lead towards COP26, to raise collective voices about not just the alarm, but about what can be and should be done and achieved at COP and after COP. So I think those were the main takeaways from that small group session.
Jorge, how do you do that? How do you raise the voice?
Well, there's many things that have been done, but we've been thinking about how to collectively come together to either reach out directly to politicians. I mean, some of my groups directly write letters, directly sit down with their politicians and representatives. We have also done from Fridays for Future a lot of conversations with scientists, with politicians, even artists that have helped us amplify our voices. Recently, for example, COP26 was being demanded to talk about animal agriculture and the need to reduce animal protein from our diets, and we used some artists in order to amplify the voice. So, I mean, there are many strategies that the youth have been like applying around the world. So it's just a matter of deciding what the message is and who you want to reach. I mean, many of the youth even sit down with the Secretary General of the UN on a regular basis. So it's about what people want to say and then try to figure out the best way to amplify it with key allies and, collaborators.
Just I want to highlight that Jorge has participated in all the sessions, in all the webinars. So I want to nominate him as a pediatric engineer.
Okay. So from the European region, we have Enes, who was moderating our session, and he can summarize what we said.
Hello, first of all, my name is Enes, and I'm a fourth-year medical student at Başkent University in Ankara, Turkey. And to summarize what we discussed in our small group discussion is that we have agreed upon the fact that advocacy and research and education really do go hand in hand, and we cannot achieve one without the other, and they all inform each other in a way. And that the role of the pediatrician in advocating for climate change and doing education and research for climate change is to always try to bring in the side of the children to the discussion, which can sometimes and mostly be overlooked by politicians or by policymakers, and to also bring in other healthcare professionals such as nurses or even other sectors into the discussion to come up with an actual useful solution. And we also really think that the way to move forward is to include a diverse group of youth in our discussions, because at the end of the day, the youth of today is the one who's going to be influenced by the impacts of climate change. And the youth of today is very aware of this fact, and they're trying to work towards this goal every step of the way. And the youth of today has a fresh perspective to an extent on the current climate and the current political situation. I think this was all.
Great.
I believe.
Very good.
So let me, Enes, is there a curriculum at all in medical school on climate change?
Well, in a sense, yes, because in first year of medical school, we had to sort of do a public outreach project, and we focused on climate change. But I wouldn't say there's a specific course focused on the impacts of climate change or how climate change impacts health. But I really think it should be noted at every discussion we have.
Great. Is Rosie on?
Yeah, hi. I'll just briefly feedback from the Africa group discussion. So we spoke about how in some settings, sometimes climate change, the issues can seem quite abstract and remote. So it's really important to relate them and connect them with actually the impacts that people are seeing in their lives every day. So that includes the impact, natural disasters, which are, caused by the impact of climate change. And there has been kind of flooding in different areas, which of course has a huge impact on people's lives. and also things like pollution from vehicles. And so these sort of environmental factors which link in with climate change and what we're seeing. So really the importance of, in order to continue to improve advocacy and raise the profile of these issues, the importance of relating them to the everyday impacts that people are seeing. And we spoke about, you know, moving forward events. So perhaps, you know, considering what the focus would be for you know, an Africa region webinar or something similar when we were looking at these issues and who might be involved, because of course these issues, it's wider than pediatricians, just as we were hearing there, I think from Jorge. So, you know, how to involve other stakeholders in that area. So that was sort of some of the discussion.
Nathan, do you want to talk about what we did, what we spoke about in the North America?
Yeah, we had a bit of a large group, around 10 were present, and we were able to hear at least from most participants and get to introduce ourselves. I think that familiarity is a theme which, as we envision starting something or continuing something, when we talk about different time zones and different interests that are already in existence, I think that's a vital consideration, which we need to continue paying attention to, is that trust for us as we're building something for the long term. It's going to involve enough bumps in the road or twists and turns. But Fan especially highlighted that it's something clear and specific, maybe 1 to 3 outcomes that we can work towards, which we would be able to then say, hey, look at us, we can actually do something together. And this was meaningful when compared to all of the other ways that we can spend our time and the issues on which we can advocate. So I think that that is an important point that we can think about, in particular, the time-sensitive opportunity of the upcoming COP, how we can try and see what we can do together. If we could all on this call even make a commitment to try and do something, try to remain in touch with at least one person who you've met or someone in your outside network who's interested in these issues, and then have a point person that you're going to keep communicating with. That dialogue, that momentum, I think is vital for us, that the way that we go from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000, essentially that exponential growth that we're envisioning in looking to a healthy planet for all children, that's all-encompassing scope. It's important that we actually can point to specific things that make this very worth our time, and that will bring in others to see that this is an impactful, a positive, a meaningful health promoting space. And so I'll maybe just invite Susan, if you could encapsulate some of your thoughts as well, because you're still on and you had a compelling vision as well. I think you're muted. Yeah. Or are you hearing, Susan? I was just going to see if you wanted to share anything in addition, or that's good. Okay. Does that sound good, Jeff?
Yeah, that's great. Well, why don't,
UK is missing. UK is missing.
Or the UK was separate from you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Tony?
yeah, we always are.
Sorry about that. My mute button wouldn't work.
So the UK want to go, and then we'll come back to Susan.
Tony, do you want to say something from our meeting? Sorry
yes, I thought you'd have been putting it all together. But,
well, yeah.
No, we had a very nice group. And I think we did discuss the international collaboration issue and how that might happen. And we also touched on a number of issues as well. But I think the international collaboration, I think there was general support for it, but that there needs to be some clear aims so that it doesn't get lost in the bureaucracy of the organizations, and quite simple aims. And that maybe it would be good to start with some discussions between those who are known to be doing things, but that we do have to involve others, such as, for example, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa. But that's probably about as far as we got with that. There were also some interesting discussions about sharing examples and how we might look at what members of the health services might do if they weren't going to use a car, what alternative means of transport they might use, or what other means of seeing patients. We didn't really come to a conclusion on that.
We had some ideas, and one of the interesting things was that Lucy herself said that these webinars had been for her life-changing, which is very interesting because it's meant that she has become much more involved in a whole series of collaborations within the Scottish context and in the Royal College context to take forward the issues to do with climate change. So that was, I thought that was very encouraging. There were some concerns about the issue to do with the international. One of the points we were making was that the organizations that have been represented and spoken at this seminar, at this webinar, are both from the United States and from the UK, and relatively no other major pediatric associations are involved. So it's important to try to move towards involving more of the international pediatric groups.
Great. But did I forget about any other region?
Thanks, Jeff.
About any other part of the world? I'm used to insulting individuals and small groups, but not the entire world. Susan, do you want to comment on?
Oh, thank you, and I'm sorry that I had a microphone failure before. I think that the point that Nathan wanted me to share was that, you know, as we're talking, it's really important that we have an agenda that is very inclusive and it's a positive focus. And often when we narrow the focus, and climate change is not a narrow topic at all, but it is a specific focus that may lead some groups to think that it's not relevant to them or it's not an immediate issue. And also, as Fan was pointing out, if parents and families and many are concerned with the immediate environment. So my point was really just, if we're thinking about messaging, naming and identity, as we bring many groups together, it would be good to have a focus on something really positive like Children for a Healthy Planet, which is all inclusive, but you can still have a specific focus. So it includes so many aspects of both the immediate environment and the environment beyond, and really creating a convening space where many organisations can come together and really emphasise this need for a child-centred focus and listen to the voices of children, because as Jeff, you've pointed out, this is a neglected or perhaps underrepresentative voice in pretty much all of these conversations. So I was really wanting to emphasise the importance of focusing on the positive, and I think I'll probably leave it there.
Okay, any comments, last comments from folks? It's It's kind of a bittersweet, time where we've come. It's hard to believe we've spent 8 months. It's been 8 months since we've been working on this, and I don't think any of us could have even begun to predict how successful this has been. Any last comments? And Jorge, if you're still on, thank you for your perseverance and being with us, especially since you're not a child health professional. Any last comments from folks? In particular, next steps?
Yeah, I was, if I could come in, just to really, as a result of what somebody said in the chat, I think it would be really good if we had an ability to have an ongoing communication channel within ISSOP on climate change with members, because I think we haven't really had that up to now. So I think that's something we should really try and think, whether we could have a member channel for continuing this communication by email or by text message or.
Tony?
Yep.
You can remind also that there is a bulletin where everybody can express their present their contributions in a regular manner. So everybody is invited to use this channel also.
Absolutely. We're still needing contributions by this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, the idea of a convening place, Tony, when you just mentioned for ISSOP, we have these 700 plus people that have unique individuals that have registered for these meetings. How do we create and we don't have to get into the details, obviously, but how do we create that meeting space for them as well? And then how do we integrate youth? The message we got from youth was a really fascinating message. For those of you who didn't participate, our perspective, or at least my perspective, was that youth, and we had 4 different youth organizations who the speakers were just superb. And I would say they pleaded that to us to help them amplify their voice, that although their voice was so important, and we see in the media and so on that every once in a while we see them, but they felt like our role, that there was a critical role that we could play to get them to the venues, help them amplify their voice, which was really fascinating to me. So in this context, Tony, of creating a space, I think one of the things we need to explore is how do we create that space for youth as well. So, any other comments? Or past? Go ahead.
So we have an ISSOP scientific committee that has met a couple times a month on average to plan these webinars. So I think that is an existing body that if we invite anyone on the call or anyone that that is particularly passionate, interested in meeting on a weekly or a regular basis for a while until we can co-create a document, roughly 1 page, that would articulate, summarize, encapsulate what it is that we envision, and then to share that with the larger body. I feel like that is something which is readily shareable on social media and is in line with the high level professional specificity that has been expressed. And so I would just propose to invite anyone on the call or anyone that feel free to reach out to me directly, or Jeff, you can speak as the president of ISSOP. I know you're interested in ensuring that this is an ongoing conversation and that this is a space where people feel welcome to have their voices represented. But I feel like that is something which is hopefully clear enough that we can work towards having that working group to draft something which then we can share with the larger body and have it be a cycle which gradually grows and develops to have the type of impacts that we're envisioning. So I'll just put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out. Happy to help have that collaborative, inclusive, welcoming leadership space.
Great. All right. Well, it's the end of the day. It's the end of the 8 months and the beginning of our next part of our journey together. So I just want to thank everybody for your participation, for your leadership, for your contributions to what we've done. You know, I've started quoting Lincoln, who said the world's not going to remember what we said here, but they won't forget what we did here. So we'll move forward. I'm going to be really, really crass and ask folks, if you can, to join ISSOP. You can go onto our website and we'll get the link out. We've gone to a non-membership fee approach and just asking you to join. And if you can contribute and donate to the organization, that's great. We really appreciate that. But most of all, we want you, we want your ideas and your passion and your energy. So I want to thank everybody again. And the really good news is that we finished this 8 months before the change in time again. So there will be no confusion in the future about what 5 GMT actually is. And Tony, you'll have to send us a note when that pile actually falls off the edge.
It's getting bigger and bigger, and it's still not fallen.
Jeff, can we just say as well a fantastic thank you to Miguel for his work throughout. Every time he has managed to organize this in a way that that functions and that has been, so we've been able to have really good discussions and it's been very productive. Thank you very much, Miguel. It's been a pleasure to have you working with us.
And we can add a fantastic thank to Eva also.
Eva, I was just going to say, we really need to give a very big thank you to Eva.
Right, where would we be without them?
Eva and Miguel.
Yes, thank you very much for all the support. All right, and the scientific committee that met pretty much sometimes 4 times a month, sometimes a couple times a month, but it's been great. All right, well, thank you everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and the agenda now is really in the short term to mobilize for COP26, which needs to be a real focus and energy and passion put into that. After that, then we can take a little bit of a breath and then figure out how we can organize for the future. So appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.